Hey guys, Adam in the AeroWorks workshop here today. Today we're going to be covering the Iris Plus quadcopter. Basically what we're going to be doing is, I know you're going to say an unboxing, but that's not what we're going to do here. We're actually going to show you what you do to prep your Iris Plus for the first time. We're going to take it out of the box. We're going to show you what comes in the kit, what goes where, how to install the gimbal, and how to get you going on your first flight. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Alright, so let's get this box opened up here. Now you'll see, once you open it up, you'll see the Iris laying in there along with the radio. First thing I usually do is take out the radio. And this is important because you want to check and make sure your radio hasn't been damaged in shipping at all. You want to go ahead and verify that all the switches are intact, that they all move and function correctly, and that everything is in place and all these little set nuts are nice and tight. Also check your antenna, make sure everything there is good. This is a time that if you do find something wrong with the radio, you'd want to go ahead and contact 3DR and get a replacement or get them to repair it. I have had one or two of these, and again, this was on the first Iris where switches came and they were a little bit loose. So you want to go ahead and just check all that, make sure everything's tight. These things get banged around in shipping. Everything here looks good, battery door's on, telemetry cable is installed, we're good to go there. Alright, next, below the front cardboard here is your long legs. Go ahead and pull those out, we'll be installing those. Slide the box over here. In the back you're going to have two boxes and they're actually taped in there. One of them is going to be your battery. The second one is going to be all of your accessories. So your telemetry modules, your cables, your batteries, etc. And we're going to go through how all that works. Again, your second box back here is your battery. Go ahead and open this up here and take a look at it. Okay, so we've got our 5100 milliamp hour battery there. That looks good. Okay, over to the right, we've got our charger. Just kind of flex the cardboard over. This is that basic charger that comes with the Iris. You're going to have your cables, your manual, your cord, everything is in there. We'll get to that in a minute. And then next, to get the Iris out of the box, they've stored the LiPo bag over the top of the arms. So to get that out, you want to just lift that up a little bit and slide this out the front. It's almost like a little lock in there, and that's your LiPo bag to charge and store your LiPos in. Next, go ahead and make sure these flaps are out of the way and simply lift it out of the box. Being careful that everything is clear and not to damage your telemetry antenna, which is another thing you want to check. Make sure that's on there good and solid. For now, we can point it up out of the way until we get our long legs on there. Okay, on the Iris you're going to have the rigid mount, your LEDs, all the cables look good here, and then we have our gimbal connectors on the bottom. We're going to be swapping out these short legs for the tall ones for a couple reasons, and we'll get into that in just a minute. So go ahead and set this aside. Alright, lastly, a couple more things. You have your manual, your sticker sets are in here. Want to make sure to read through the quick start guide there. And then if you lift this up one more time, you're going to have two boxes, which are your props. So we'll go ahead and pull those out. There's one box of two, and number two box. So you should have two boxes, each containing two props. That's your full prop set. The only other thing left in here is some foreign adapters for charging in other countries. And they're all stuck together here. Right here, and you can set those aside, and if you're in the US you'll probably never use those again. That's it, that's all that's in the box. Let's get started on how we assemble it. Alright, now one of the first things we do on our Irises is install the long legs. Now a lot of people might ask, well, why would I do that if I'm not going to put a gimbal on there? We do it for two reasons, and I'll show you here. First off, if you're using the short legs, unless you just plan on doing acrobatic flight and you're never going to have a gimbal, what the long legs do is, for one, they give you a lot more room when you're trying to get that battery door open and get your battery in there, because it's going to sit up here out of the way. And two, and the more important one, is that when you buy an Iris Plus, the biggest thing with the Plus is that you have upgraded motors. These motors are much more powerful, and these arms are much lighter. And if you don't install the longer legs, what we've found is that the more powerful motors can cause some vibration. And having the long legs installed on there will actually dampen the arms and give you a little bit less vibration. Similar to how an archery or a bow hunter might have a stabilizer on the front. These long legs provide that stabilization that you need. Now there's something you need to make yourselves aware of that's very important when you install these. First, put yourself down something protective so you don't scratch the cover. Make sure your telemetry antenna is out of the way, or remove it altogether. Flip it over, and you're going to notice that on the very bottom here, where the short legs are, there is a small set screw. Now this is a 1.5 millimeter set screw. So we're going to simply loosen that set screw just enough until we feel the little short leg starting to slide. Once it starts to loosen up, pull it directly off. Now it's very important, and a lot of people make this mistake, that once that set screw is clear of the landing gear, you can take it off. And just the opposite goes when you're installing it. It's very important that you don't over tighten these screws, because if you do, you will actually tighten down onto the motor, causing damage to the motor. And if you tighten it too much, you could actually pop the motor free. So when you're installing the long legs, make sure that they're pointing outwards, that you slide it into the groove until the front and the back of the dovetail are flush. And all you need to do is turn this set screw maybe 3 or 4 turns until it's actually protruding into that little mounting hole. You don't want it to actually, it's not supposed to tighten down on anything. So if you have some thread sticking out, that's okay. So we'll go ahead and continue doing that all the way around, and then we'll pick it up right after that. Alright, moving on now. We've got all 4 legs on. We've made sure that we didn't over tighten those set screws. The next thing that we do, when you plan on installing the gimbal, there's really no reason to have the fixed mount on the front. So we typically will take that off just to lose a little bit more weight. And we do this on all of our Spec Ops kit. If you plan on using the front mount, then by all means leave it on there. Or if you want to run both, you can. But again, every bit of weight on any of these copters is going to give you better flight performance, better flight time. So just loosen them up, leave the washers in. There's some rubber grommets on there, and set those aside for later. Alright, we've got everything installed. Go ahead and flip this back over. And you're going to see now much more room to get to your battery door. The door fully opens. You have lots of room here. And again, remember, we've got that stability of having the long legs on there with the more powerful motors. Now, a lot of people I've seen on the forums are questioning, what is this antenna here? Well, this is your telemetry antenna. The telemetry antenna is what transmits the flight data down to your tablet, your laptop, or your phone. And it's used for the autonomous flight missions. For best flight performance, we recommend that you point it in the downward position. So make sure it's tight, and then at the hinge there, point that straight down to give you the best range when you're flying in the air. The radio controller, the remote control, has an antenna on the top, and that transmits to a receiver that's in here. Alright, inside of the shell, this is one we're working on, but inside of this shell you can see there is a small receiver inside of there, and the antennas are just simply taped down to the inside of the top shell. They're spread out and taped down. This is actually an Iris 1 that we're going to be doing an upgrade kit on. But the receiver is mounted exactly the same in the Iris Plus. Alright, let's take a look at what's in the accessory box. Now this is going to include your telemetry radios. This is your ground radio. A long USB cable for connecting to a PC, to the Pixhawk, or to your telemetry radios. You're going to have a tool kit, standard Allen wrenches, and your prop wrench for if you got a prop that's on there a little bit too tight. You're going to have your tablet connection, and this is one that gets a lot of people. When you're using this, you want to make sure, even though the both ends are the same, the L-shaped one should always be used on your mobile device, and the straight one should go into your radio. So we'll get into that later, but that's the proper configuration for that cable. You do get a micro SD card adapter. Now a lot of people are like, well, what is this for? Where does that go? Well, there's a micro SD card already installed inside the Pixhawk. And inside the Pixhawk, there is and again, I'm going to show you one that we have taken apart. But inside of the Pixhawk, there is a small slot in here, and that's where all your flash data, all your telemetry logs, and all that good stuff you can retrieve from there. So you'll never really need this unless for some reason you wanted to take this out and read it, but that would require you to open up everything up. So But that's what that's for, and just keep it in your kit, but know that the card is already installed. Alright, you also get 8, actually you get more than 8, you get 10 AA batteries, and these are just standard alkaline batteries. We will be providing on our site a LiPo option for the radio, because 8 AA's, who wants to mess with AA's all the time? It's very time consuming to take this out and plug all these in, and this battery tray, it's fairly tight when you get those all in there. So we will have a LiPo option available soon that'll fit in here nice and plug right into that standard power slot and allow you to actually charge it up and use it over and over again. But you do get the 10 batteries with it, and when we test these out for customers, we typically install those, test the radio out, and we'll ship it ready to go that way right to you. So that's all the parts in the accessory kit. The last box we have is our battery. So we're going to go ahead and open this up. You got your LiPo battery here. Now a lot of people, if you're new to the hobby or you come from the Phantom world, you're not used to what these extra cables are, or any cables for that matter. So on this type of a LiPo battery, and this happens to be a 3-cell 11.1 volt battery, 3.7 volts a cell. We have the main battery connector, and then we have our balance lead. And on your stock charger, we're going to go into how you do that. It's very important that you set the switches correctly and plug everything in correctly. So, the way this is done, on your charger you have LiPo and Li-Fi. You want to make sure it's on the LiPo setting, and you want to make sure it's at 2 to 3 amps. Now, why would I charge the different ratings? It's going to charge faster on 3 amps, but you're also going to shorten the life of the battery. The slower you charge it, the lower amperage, the longer the battery is going to last, but it's going to take longer to charge it up. So, if you want to get out and get flying, put it on 3, put it on LiPo, you should be good to go. The cables that are included, the standard banana connector to XT60. You want to make sure and match up the colors, black to black, red to red. This is our main power cord, and then we have our AC cord here. AC cord simply plugs in to the back and then plugs into a standard wall outlet. Now, how do you hook up your battery to this? So what you want to do is plug in your balance lead, and there's several different sizes here, but there's one that says 3S. You want to plug that into the 3S slot, and they could be a little tight when you first get these. It's also hard to do when you're trying to keep your head out of the camera view. Alright, so that balance lead's plugged in, and then you're going to go ahead and plug in the main connector. Now we'll go ahead and plug this in, and what we should see is 3 lights light up indicating that we have 1, 2, 3 cells, and then the main light will go to red indicating that it's charging. When the battery is done charging, this light will turn green indicating that it's done. You can simply unplug everything and unplug it from the wall and your battery's charged. All right, I'm going to go ahead and install the AA batteries here. I've already started a little bit. One thing on this particular battery tray, a lot of you are probably used to always putting in the spring side first and pushing that down, and then pushing this one in. Because of this tight fit here, I always recommend that you start the opposite way that you normally would do it. So push that one in, leave the spring side exposed, push that down in and on top, and it goes right in there. Make sure everything's in there nice. So again, don't push down on the spring side first, push in on the tab side, and then install your battery on the spring side last, because it's such a tight fit. There you go. Make sure they're all in, everything looks square. To put this in, you want to leave not the plastic side up, but the battery tray side up, and I'll show you why. You're going to lay that in there like that, and it's actually easier to put this power plug in first. Make sure you've got the 2 prongs. There's 2 little prongs on there facing up. Plug that in all the way. I'll turn that off there. All the way in. Again, leave the shiny side of the batteries up like that. And this gives you a little spot to lay your cables in there. So with that down in there, put the battery cover over the top and push it in. There we go. It's on. Everything's good and tight there. Go ahead and try to power it up. Alright, so we've got 11.1 volts. And again, you can see your stick's actually moving on here. To get to the telemetry data, a lot of people just push the button once and they don't see anything here. You have to push and hold it. When you push and hold it, you'll get the sats, the battery usage, the milliamps, the distance, the speed, and all that. So remember, you got to push and hold the down arrow. From that point, it'll cycle through the other things. But just remember that push and hold that first time. Again, whenever you're powering up your iris, you want to make sure all the switches are up and away from you. And one thing that the tilt dial does for the gimbal, a lot of people are used to tilting down and tilting back up. Think of this as a volume knob, and that you would normally turn it this way to go down and this way to go up. So they've kind of got it reversed. You could reverse that, but out of the box, just keep in mind that down is this way, up is that way. Alright, one of the things that I like to do when I'm first setting up an iris, and again, make sure you have your props off. We're actually in the shop here. But when you first get your iris, keep in mind it was built somewhere else, and the last GPS signal it had was many, hundreds or thousands of miles away. So one of the things I like to do is just take out your battery and go ahead and plug the battery in and let it just sit there and kind of figure out where it's at. This will also allow you to check and make sure all your lights are working, that you heard the right tones. And wait until we start seeing a green LED on here indicating that we're getting some GPS signal. That way, while you're adjusting and getting everything else out of your case or your box, going through the accessories, this will have been sitting for a while trying to get that GPS location. And when you go outside for the first time, you'll have a lot better chance of getting a quick acquisition. Now, some people, depending on your location, you may have to take it outside and let it do this anyways for a few minutes that first time because of the structure of where you're at or your building. You know, it's not going to work if you're inside of a metal building. But here we're in a fairly good sized shop. So again, we're just powering it up, kind of letting everything boot up for the first time while we get everything else set to go. Now this is also a good time to try out some of the telemetry parts and pieces. So let's go ahead and get out our cable here. And we will get out our telemetry radios. Go ahead and set this aside for a second. Let it just boot up there. Alright, and again, make sure your antenna's on there nice and snug. Put your straight cable in, leaving the blue cable for your mobile device. Now again, this is an Android-based system. So right now there's no support for the iPads, but you can use laptops, Android devices, telephones, and etc. So in this case we're using the Nexus 7 tablet. It's a great tablet. You can get these for about 150 bucks, even cheaper. I've got a $12 rubber cover on here. It's great if you drop it. It's got some weatherproof capabilities. So you want to basically look at the polarity on there, or the direction, and install your antenna like that. And that's the typical configuration you're going to have on a Nexus 7 tablet. We'll wait for that to boot up, and we'll come right back. Alright, it's been about 5 minutes since we plugged in the battery. You can see now that we're getting a GPS signal, which is great. The iris has found where it is in the world. We've got our telemetry module powered up, plugged in to our Nexus 7 tablet. We're going to go ahead and hit the connect button.
Connected.
And we're connected. So, some of the things you can do before you take out and do your first flight on your radio. Again, we have the props off inside.
GPS 3D lock.
Make sure all your switches are up and away from you. Go ahead and verify that your modes are displaying correctly. So here we're in the standard or stabilized mode.
Mode loiter.
We're in loiter.
Mode auto.
Flip it back to standard.
Mode altitude hold. Mode return to launch. Mode altitude hold. Mode land.
So we feel confident now that what is programmed in there is actually working because our radio is transmitting that to the iris, and the telemetry data being transmitted from here to here is displaying the correct information. Also on the radio, you can see we have 10.9 volts on the radio itself. If I push and hold the down button, we have Alt-Hold being shown there as well. If I go to loiter,
Mode loiter.
it's loiter. And if I go to auto, it's auto. So it's also displaying on the telemetry data on the screen. We have 7 satellites. Our internal battery is 11.3, and we've only used 5 milliamps. And then we have altitude and speed. And of course, this will all get better as we get a stronger lock and it's been out there flying. Down on the very bottom, you have a timer. So when you advance the throttle, the timer starts. So you can, at any time, you can look down and see, how long have I been flying this thing. On the Nexus 7 tablet, it actually waits until you're armed, but it'll show you air time there. We also have TX batteries, so transmitter batteries shown here when you're on this screen. So that's kind of what I do on a pre-flight check. You want to make sure that you have that your modes are displaying properly. Now, speaking of pre-flight checks, in Droid Planner 2.0, we have a checklist. And I hit the wrong button there. Here we go, checklist. And it starts at the top here. So camera connected and switch on. Of course, if we have our camera, we can check that box. And you can just simply go down the list here, and it gives you some things to check. We'll go into a more in-depth video on the Droid Planner app and how you can use it. But this is what we do using the flight data screen. You can also verify your pitch angle and all that is working and that you're actually seeing movement there. So we know that our radio is charged up. We have batteries there. We know we have a GPS satellite lock. We know our telemetry system is working. And this is this Iris is prepared for its first flight. So we will go ahead and proceed with getting props on and getting out and actually doing that first flight. All right, we'll go ahead and get our props on because we're ready to take it out for the first flight. Each box contains 2 props, one clockwise, one counterclockwise. They are also color-coded to the motor that they go on, so you can't mess that up. The silver props go on, they twist on counterclockwise. And you want to spin them down. I usually just hold the motor, make sure they're nice and snug. The black-tipped, black motor props go on clockwise, and again, spin them down until they bump up, and just spin that motor until they snug up. Now, if you remember, we had that tool earlier that we showed you in the toolkit. If for some reason down the road, especially if it's hot out or cold, or you go from extreme temperatures, if the props become too tight to get off by hand, you can use this tool here and actually set this over the motor and hold the motor and undo it. So it's not needed to install or take off the props typically, but if it gets to a point where they're too tight and you just can't get them off, you can by all means use the prop wrench and take them off or loosen them up. Go ahead and install the second set. Again, we would still be installing the bushings on the Iris 1 on this one. So these props are a huge improvement over the very first Iris. Big improvement. And they're actually, I believe they're $10 a pair. So cheaper than the Phantom props even. So again, clockwise on the black ones. Snug it up. Counterclockwise on the silver ones. And snug it up. And we are done. Props are on. Batteries charged. Long legs are on, telemetry antenna is installed and pointing down. We're ready to take this out for the first flight. One other thing before we do our first flight, I want to talk about the simple checklist that's on the back of here. A lot of people are concerned about a compass calibration. They're not sure how to do it. They run out, they install it, the software on their PC, they plug it in, and they're trying to do compass calibration. You do not need to do a compass calibration on an Iris when you get it. Unless you're not getting a green LED, that would be the only reason that you would need to do a compass calibration, or you've upgraded firmware. But if you follow the steps on here, if you're just take it out of the box, do what it says here, obviously you have to put your batteries in the controller, but turn on the controller, connect the charged battery, place the Iris on the ground, press the safety button until it becomes solid red, wait for blinking blue status light, which means it's ready, or green for GPS, and then to arm, hold the left controller stick down until the motor spin. You'll be fine. What the Iris does, and this is the case with any APM or Pixhawk controller that has this feature enabled, is it auto-calibrates the compass. So you go out and fly for, 5 or so minutes. Just keep it down low, 10, 15 feet off the ground. Keep it in a hover. It's not going to be perfect that first flight. When you land and disarm the motors, it saves the settings to the magnetic compass inside. So each flight and every flight after, the compass will fine-tune itself to the location you're at. So you don't have to worry about that compass dance. Now again, you can do the compass dance if you want to. It's not required when you take this Iris out of the box. The only thing you have to do is charge the battery, put the batteries in the controller, and follow the directions on the sticker, and you'll be fine. You don't even have to hook it to a computer if you don't want to. So that might help a few people who are concerned that they have to run out and connect it directly to a PC or download something, and then all of a sudden they start running the wizard, and before you know it, they're changing firmware and they're changing parameters, and the whole thing's messed up. You don't need to connect this to a computer.